Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majid Khan. Today we have two stories in our program that we'll be covering. The first one is the United States' special envoy has resumed his Afghan peace diplomacy. Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad has left Washington and is on another peace mission that includes talks in Afghanistan, in Pakistan and Qatar, among other places. Our second topic is to do with the anti-India protests that have erupted in occupied Kashmir after another 5 innocent Kashmiris have been killed. So we'll talk about that in some detail as well. I'd like to introduce my guest in the studio. Joining me for the conversation today, first of all, we have Toghrul Yamin Saab with us. Joining him, we have Shahid Kiani Saab. And with him, we also have Asma Wadood. Thank you very much for being here. Sir, I'll start with you. The Afghan president, Mr. Ghani, has said that that he would welcome the Taliban to open an office in Kabul rather than the office in Doha, but the Taliban haven't really accepted his sort of offer. What do you think is the reason behind that, sir?
Ashraf Ghani feels left out. That's his problem. Nobody's talking to him. Nobody's. Zalmay Khalilzad is filling him up, but he doesn't know what happened in Moscow. And in Moscow, there were people who were opposed to him. There was Karzai. There were ladies who wanted Taliban to listen to them, because most people now understand that the next political dispensation would be heavily dominated by the Taliban. So he doesn't know what happened in Moscow, and he actually taunted. He said, I was offering them talks in Mecca. They did not agree to that, and they went to Moscow.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that later on in the program, sir, but now that you've brought it up, why don't you comment on this particular statement of trying to compare or trying to elicit some kind of a emotional reaction from the people by saying that instead of going to Makkah, they went to Moscow? It's trying to compare them.
He's desperate. Time is running out for him. By all calculations, Taliban will come back, whether they are in majority or whether they are equal shareholders. There's only time will tell. So he's desperate. He has been the one who did not want Taliban. Karzai also did not want Taliban, but Karzai is a more practical person. He's talking to Taliban. So Ashraf Ghani is totally secluded. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So that is why he made that particular remark. And now that Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad had seen the Moscow format also completed, he's back. So people are desperate. They are jostling for power, jostling for space. The Americans are leaving for sure. They've made up their minds.
It's not a question of if, but a question of when now.
When and in what shape would they be leaving? So probably they also want some kind of help from Taliban, so they leave in a fairly dignified manner. So Ashraf Ghani wants some share of the negotiations that's taking place, which it's eluding him. The Taliban is in no mood to talk to him. The Taliban have not even ceased their operation. They're still launching their operations, killing state forces, state troopers and all that stuff. So things appear bleak to Ashraf Ghani. That's my judgment about him.
Well, let's see how things pan out for Mr. Ashraf Ghani in the future, sir. But at the moment, it seems that you're absolutely right. Zalmay Khalilzad, sir, on his tour or on his trip, has also decided to consult officials in Belgium, Turkey, and Germany. Can you please explain to us why Belgium and Germany and Turkey? Well, we can understand.
There are two reasons. One, they are NATO members. These two are extremely important. And then they are development partners also. Let me first comment on then I come back to this when they talk about President Ghani asking for them to open office. First of all, it's the issue of it's not a government which has ever been recognized by the Taliban. So opening an office, there are two reasons. Opening office is totally counterproductive for the Taliban. He shouldn't even been talking about it. Second thing is, this government, since its inception, since now they're going for the second elections, President Ghani and his chief executive, they've never been talking to even each other. So what to talk about others accepting them as a legitimate government? He's number two, doesn't even accept him. So these are issues. I think he's wasting his time, to be very honest. Instead of allowing this whole process to continue, they're asking. It would be better. My opinion is, sir, that these elections, which he thinks should take place, I think should be put on hold. It cannot go on, because this is a process in which Taliban, we have been talking on this forum for the last maybe many years, that Taliban are legitimate stakeholders in any new government which takes place, and Dr. Tuggal was right. So, my issue is now they should be able to concentrate. President Ghani should allow this process to continue. Naturally, a time will come when whoever is in control of the Afghan government will be taken on board, because you have to talk. This has to be intra-Afghan
Exactly,
dialogue.
that was going to be my next question.
Intra-Afghan dialogue. Second thing is, Mr. Khalilzad is right in going around all these countries. Germany, Belgium, members of NATO, serious members, they have been contributing troops here. Then they are very important development partners. They have contributed to the social sectors in Afghanistan. So they are important. They understand. Then he wants a larger consultation, Khalilzad. He has been to other countries, been to Pakistan, he's been to Iran, he has been to Russia. All the countries who are the neighbors, geopolitical importance to Afghanistan, he has been there. So I think by the time the next round takes place, Mr. Khalilzad, let us commend him and naturally the US government, Trump, that they have moved this process forward. In the last few years, you had never heard of the Taliban even going public. They never even admitted they were having a dialogue with the Americans. Now they are talking very openly. Yesterday's, if you look at the press conference, the spokesman had, Zabiullah, he was very clear. Naturally, he didn't agree that Pakistan was helping. Pakistan is helping. I think we shouldn't make any bones about it. If they are happy with that we are not, in the forefront in helping them, the Americans admit. Those who matter admit. And I think this is a crucial phase in which Pakistan should continue to give behind the scenes support to these talks. And we are, in my opinion, we are quite hopeful that the next phase I don't think this is going to end. There will be a series of phases. Further talks, and the Taliban will continue to, on the parallel, will continue to start, occupying more territory to show its strength as a bargaining chip.
Well, let's talk about what the State Department has said regarding Mr. Khalilzad's trip. And they say that it's a part of the overall effort to facilitate a peace process that protects U.S. national security interests and brings all Afghan parties together in an intra-Afghan dialogue through which they can determine a path for their country's future, what Sir was referring to earlier. In your opinion, do you think that the Taliban have been able to convince the Americans that Afghan soil will no longer be used against any other country as they have claimed earlier on? And they've also given an explanation of why earlier those elements that were part of Al-Qaeda and other so-called terrorist organizations found refuge in Afghanistan. Please comment on that.
Actually, Taliban, if we look at the broader picture, Taliban are the party who's going to gain the maximum out of this peace process. Like, see, they have given their 17 years, they have sacrificed, they have fought. Now in a position that they can even sustain for a longer period of time. Their bargaining power is much stronger. This peace process will give them an opportunity to come out from their tag of a roadside militia to a proper political identity, right? So they are gaining a lot from it. They are open to a new beginning through this peace process. If one issue is settled through peace negotiation, Taliban will get maximum from this peace process if peace process is done through negotiation and gradual sustainable peace is ensured with different parties getting involved in it. Like now Zalmay Khalilzad visit to the NATO partners and other development partners. Before that it was UAE and KSA, Saudi Arabia were taken on board. So now they are in much better negotiation power. They are also increasing the pressure by continuing their operations. On the other hand, US needs an exit, and they need an exit before 2020 because President Trump needs something on his scorecard when he goes to the election, and a settlement through peace in Afghanistan will be a golden star on that scorecard. So if you put things together, US is interested in the peace process, and this is an opportunity for Taliban to get into the mainstream, get the mainstream recognition that they were not able to get in the past. So that if we look at this, it is a gain from both sides, and if the process continues like this, like the negotiation process is on, and even with the Ghani Saab tweet and other news that came in like past few days, according to my interest, they want to get a stake on it in this as well. They want to get into the process as well, because they will be losing a lot. They have a considerably limited hold in Afghanistan, but now they are understanding what they are losing. They want to get in the peace process somehow, like offering Afghanistan to offering Taliban to open an office in Kabul. That is an obvious interest of getting into peace process through negotiation, because they have been kept out. So this is a gain-gain situation for everybody, except the Afghan government, and they want to get their share in the peace process as well through opening up to Afghanistan. They didn't do it in the past.
Well, let's also see what Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad said regarding Pakistan, sir. And he said that Pakistan had played a very positive role in facilitating the peace talks, and he said that the US administration recognized Pakistan's role and wanted better relations with this important country. What do you think about this statement, sir?
I think what he meant was that Mullah Brother was released on their request by the Pakistani government, and it was Mullah Brother who led the negotiations in the first round of talks in Doha, Qatar. So I think he was referring to that, and everybody realizes that Pakistan has an important geostrategic position insofar as Afghanistan is concerned, also Iran and China. So you cannot totally ignore Pakistan. You cannot say that India has stakes in Afghanistan and Pakistan does not. So Zalmay Khalilzad knows that. Zalmay Khalilzad does not want to spoil the show now. They are sensing that some kind of agreement is going to take place, whether the elections take place in July or not. But everybody knows that some kind of a solution to the long overdue Afghanistan conundrum is in sight. So everybody is trying to talk to Taliban. Everybody wants Pakistan to be part of it, because Pakistan still has a role to play. They may not be over influential insofar as the Taliban are concerned, because Taliban are people of their own mind, and they can also say that no, Pakistan did not play any role, although we understand Pakistan did play a role.
Sir, I want to talk about Mr. Ghani's statement regarding having the peace process and the dialogue to be held on Afghan soil. Again, reference to the meetings in Moscow or in Makkah or elsewhere. He wants to bring the conversation to Afghan soil, and that is something that nobody can really negate or say, you know, we don't want to do that. But at the same time, Mr. Ghani, just before the elections, he finds himself in a very strange predicament, because there's a lot of what should one say, sir, too many things up in the air right now for him to make a proper decision. So at the same time, sir, why is it that the Afghan Taliban are reluctant to hold the peace talks in Afghanistan?
Taliban just do not want to make any conversation with the current Afghan government, because they think that a lot of harm that has been done to them is because of the current Afghan government, and so they are not in a mood to talk to them. I doubt if they open the office in.
What do you make of the statement by Mr. Ghani when he says that he cannot give up his position because he was elected to this post of president, and he would be letting down the great people of Afghanistan if he were to, climb down from his lofty spot?
And as Shahid Ghani Sahab very rightly pointed out, his number two, Abdullah, had when the election took place, he said that it was rigging at an industrial scale, and he fell out with him, and it was the Americans which brought the two strange bedfellows together. So it was with a great deal of difficulty that they were able to cobble together whatever semi-legitimate government in Kabul, not the rest of Afghanistan. So Ashraf Ghani feels that he's left out. He's at the cusp of being discarded to the dustbin of history. Absolutely. Abdullah is quiet. One doesn't know what's going to happen to him. So these people want some legitimacy. And Zalmay Khalilzad has also been saying time and again that he will see to it that the Afghan government is also made part of the. So he'll make some last-ditch efforts to it. But in the long run, whether he is able to deliver on his promise to Ashraf Ghani, I do not know.
So let's talk a little bit about the resolution that came out of the Moscow talks. Some of those resolutions have been shared with the media, not all of them, sir. I would like to point out the ones that are important, and these are the demand for the withdrawal of all foreign troops, support to the Doha talks, removing Taliban members from the UN blacklist, and the release of their prisoners, and legitimizing Taliban's Qatar office. Do you think that these demands would be welcomed by the Americans and that they can move forward on these, despite the fact that Mr. Ghani would not be very happy with any of these demands?
First of all, most unfortunate, I don't see President Ghani in the crystal ball in the next 6 months. I doubt it very much he would be there for the Taliban to hold talks. That I can tell you. And you will see how the Americans, in spite of insisting that please, telling Taliban, please hold talks with Ghani, his representatives were not given any role either in Qatar or when they went, and in Moscow, they're not there at all. So I doubt very much that for the Americans, President Ghani is so important. They want intra-Afghan talks. It will happen. These talks which are happening, I am looking at maybe 3 to 4 months down the road, where there may be another series of talks in which the Taliban would be considered legitimate by the Americans and by the others, that yes, they are the ones, they have an important role to play, because they've already given a very positive feeler. They said that we are one of the actors, one of the important players in Afghanistan. They don't talk about Ghani, but there are others. The Northern Alliance people, they are important. They have been there in power. But now the Northern Alliance people will have to also understand that they are not the only people in Afghanistan. Though both of them, they will have to coexist. I don't see President Ghani being there. Naturally, the withdrawal of foreign forces have been on Taliban's demand right from the outset. They don't want any.
That is the most fundamental demand.
Absolutely. They have been fighting a war for the last if you can
18 years.
18 years, even earlier. They were part of. They were the ones who never considered the occupiers, the American others, to have anything. But at the same time, Americans want an end, a ceasefire, and
guarantees for security.
Sir, they will be linked. But you will see something very interesting. The Taliban are now clever. You see, these people they have matured over the years. They would like Americans to be there, not their forces, but as partners in reconstruction of Afghanistan. They know they have the money. They are the ones who are going to remove the blacklist. They are the ones who control the banks outside. So all these things are there. The Taliban are clever, and then they have sent the right feelers. They said that we will have a Islamic constitution, but women's role will also be important.
Yes, sir. We'll come to that later on, sir. I want to bring this question to Madam Asma. We also have the acting Pentagon chief, Mr. Patrick Shanahan, arriving in Afghanistan, and along with that arrival is also Mr. Trump's announcement of pulling the troops out of Afghanistan. Do you think he's there in a role to sort of try to give Mr. Ghani some kind of an assurance that he doesn't have much to worry about, and the Americans are still standing by the Afghan government, and so on and so forth? What exactly do you think the Pentagon, acting Pentagon chief is doing in Afghanistan at the moment?
Actually, I don't think they are offering anything anything to Ashraf Ghani Sahab, any securities or something like that. Actually, there is a difference between White House and Pentagon with the reference of withdrawing the troops from Afghanistan and Syria. Like when President Trump announced the withdrawal of 2,000 troops from Syria, James Mattis, his Secretary of Defense, resigned because they want to keep their strategic interest in the region intact. They don't want to leave the region on completely and pull out. So I think this visit will be aiming to bridge the gap between the interest of the White House to pull out completely and keep the strategic interest somehow within the region.
Well, the last time they pulled out abruptly was right after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And they had another agenda, which was Iraq.
Exactly.
This time they have Venezuela on the horizon. So do you think that might be the case?
Yeah,
you never know. I mean, they could just pull out and say,
1990.
listen, we're done. We got a bigger fish to fry.
Exactly.
Sorry to say that.
Exactly, and they don't want to replicate 1990s again. They want the region
You
to
think?
sustain. And for that, like we have never, in 1990s, they were not, when they were pulling out, there was not any interest of getting any development partners in the region and keeping, ensuring that peace sustains in the region. This time there is an inclination that if the peace happens, it should sustain. And this is what we are seeing here. So, for this visit, it will be an effort to bridge the gap, to keep the strategic interest intact and somehow engage the region, but non-militarily, in an alternative way. That will see.
So do you think that now they're just really talking about the nitty-gritty and hammering out the finer details of the peace deal? And in principle, the broad contours of the deal have already been finalized, as they would say. Would you agree with this perception, sir?
The main stumbling block here is ceasefire. If there is no ceasefire and if they continue to fight, then this peace talk might, I won't say fall, but it would be very prolonged process. So one is ceasefire, and then obviously how would the withdrawal take place? Is it going to be all of a sudden? Is it going to be phased? How many people are going to go in the first phase, how many in the second phase, how many in the third phase, how many people are going to stay behind? Would the Taliban in any case be talking about the contractors, the shadow army? There are no details about these people, and they do play a very important role in most places where the Americans have gone, the contractors, the Blackwater and all that stuff. So there are, the devil lies in the detail. Many things are still not very clear. The Taliban would like to know the method of their withdrawal. They would like to find out when they would stop their operations, how will they stop operations, would they be taking ownership of the Afghan National Army? That is also very important.
Interestingly, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but I would think this is the right time to add this. Mr. Khalilzad has expressed the hope of finding a deal before the Afghan presidential elections scheduled for July. But he also emphasized at the same time that any troop withdrawal would depend on the conditions on the ground. And as we know, the conditions of the ground are very fluid. They keep changing. They're more...
They're still fighting. So one really doesn't know how it's going to happen, because is it going to be a repeat of the Cold War, whether the wall is going to break and people are going to just mingle and rejoice and become happy with each other? No, I think a lot of things have to be decided, and it shouldn't be the way the Americans left last time. They also know, the Taliban also know, the Afghan government in Kabul also knows. So a lot has to be decided, and I think there has to be some second tier and third tier leadership also, which will finally become involved. But I do not know whether the Taliban have second tier or third tier or fourth tier leadership, because many things have to be decided on ground. What are we going to be the areas of responsibility and all that.
I think there are some clues that have been given by the Afghan Taliban themselves, and I'd like to start with the Kiani Saab. The Afghan Taliban have suggested that they've outlined their vision for Afghanistan, proposing an inclusive Islamic system of governance and demanding a new Islam-based constitution for the country. How do you think that's going to happen, sir?
Let me just narrate to you. I was in Ottawa, Canada, after the 9/11, and I saw a big gathering of these Afghan refugees in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs prior to the Bonn meeting. They had gathered there. And I remember talking to the Afghan refugees, who are extremely, literate professionals who are living there, that even at that time envisaged Taliban to be part of something, because they said that keeping them out would be, they said they have created serious problems in Afghanistan, but to keep them out would be very difficult. Then I've been to Afghanistan a number of times. That was in 2008. And I've seen how the civil war has wrought destruction in Afghanistan much more than the Soviet occupation. So the Afghan people know what is in store, and even the Taliban know that if this withdrawal takes place suddenly, what is going to happen? They don't want a disorganized withdrawal. They would like to see them being their position strengthened in Afghanistan prior to them. Regarding, I tell you, I doubt very much there will be any elections. There might be an interim government, because the Americans would not like to, dilute their whole, the counterproductive thing, that if they are at one time brought the Taliban to the negotiating table and brought them such a progress has been made, and the Taliban would not like to talk to President Ghani. What to talk about the next elections? One should be looking at an interim government in which all the stakeholders are there, especially the Northern Alliance and the Taliban. And if you ask all the neighboring countries, especially China, Russia, Pakistan, even Iran, I doubt very much they are looking towards the election. Even the Americans would be, very skeptical about the elections.
That's very interesting, sir, because I would also like to add what the Taliban themselves have elaborated on what they mean by the Islamic constitution. When we say we want an inclusive political system, we mean that the future government will represent all ethnicities of Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
All will serve it, and all will look after the country's affairs themselves without any arguments.
So this is
quite interesting.
This is what I'm saying. You look at 2-3 years back and look at now. It's a maturity, and as Ms. Madood was saying, political maturity. They're looking towards them not as somebody who's been fighting, somebody who have a stake in this, somebody who can govern, and they have the experience of statecraft.
Well, furthermore, he said that no country would ever accept a constitution drafted and imposed upon them while they were being bombed. And our society is nearly 100% Muslim. Our constitution will be drafted for us and implemented in the light of the teachings of the Sharia. So how do you think that's going to go on forward in the negotiations with the Americans?
I think this is one of the basic rights any country has, and they should be given this opportunity to draft their constitution. They are being flexible, they are being open. They want to get into mainstream. They want to be recognized as a political identity, and they have matured over time. This is a sign that they have now made up their mind to take it from here onwards, a new beginning, a new start. And if they're able to do that and take all the all the people on board and all like give the due right to the women, that was one of the core issues before. This will go a long way for the Taliban.
Kiani Saab just mentioned that he expects that there is going to be an interim setup and elections will probably not take place. That's his opinion. But according to the Taliban's response, the Taliban spokesman said that they had neither held any discussions regarding an interim government and nor had they proposed such an idea. So how would this process of establishing or writing a new constitution based on Islamic principles, how will this move forward?
Actually, the election, 2019 election, they have been taken. The government has taken is taking very seriously. Like during the paper filing episode, we have seen that almost all the big players, the known players from the government, they have submitted their papers. In the past as well, in the election, if you see, the Pakhtun card played a very critical role. So election is intact somehow. If in term government they have not opted for it, but the election I see that it is coming. They are like the government is focused on that, and there need to be some body available there to develop the constitution and implement it. So let's see how it goes. Like for me, I think the election is going to be there. But the role of Taliban will be critical, like before as well. Like they have taken a side of one candidate and he won. Something of that going to take place, but the role of Taliban will be critical in that situation as well.
It's very interesting the way things are developing, especially the refusal of the Afghan Taliban to engage with the Kabul government on any point, sir, that they have completely thrown out of the window as an option, because they've given a very good explanation for why they've done that. They say, first of all, that refusing to talk to Kabul, any talks with the Ghani regime would have symbolic ramifications. First of all, if the Taliban were to hold talks with the Kabul government, it would mean that they had accepted this stooge regime as a legitimate government and imposed upon us by aircraft and bombing of invaders. And he said that this would entail an acknowledgement that the Taliban were in fact rebels rather than a legitimate second power. What do you think about that, sir?
I think that's a very genuine fear that the Taliban have. Even now, I think a day or two ago, there were bombings in which 20-odd people were killed, and bombings have been going on. Innocent people have been killed.
Yes, sir.
So they're quite right when they say that why should we accept a stooge who has the backing of a foreign power? And why should we accept a constitution which has been imposed upon us? We are not second raters, we are legitimate stakeholders, we should be given our rights, our genuine demands should be accepted. And I think they're going to have their way, whether there are elections, whether there are no elections, they're going to have their ways. Because America cannot hold on indefinitely. Ashraf Ghani cannot gate crash into the negotiations. He does not have the power. Nobody is backing him. I think with time, perhaps he will, if he is sensible enough, he'll probably bow out of it. He will say, I'm going back.
I think the most pertinent statement that has come from Mr. Zabiullah Mujahid, sir, is that the Islamic Emirate sheltered those foreign Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda operatives that had arrived in Afghanistan during the period of jihad against the Soviet Union and remained behind as an inheritance. Their protection was a religious and cultural necessity. However, currently, there is no one that needed the Taliban's shelter, and therefore he stated that the Islamic Emirate shall never allow anyone to harm others from our soil. I think that's the most important thing that the Americans are looking for.
This is what I'm saying. The Osama bin Laden episode is, you know, this is something which was a wake-up call for them. And if you look at all the document which have been, that Pakistan tried, you know, intervened and said, talked to them and said that please tell this man to, you know, he's a burden. We should go, leave. And then they said as exactly that they are a guest. They will learn a lesson. They will not allow anybody to become partners who are not Afghans. Intra-Afghan dialogue, I think they will welcome. Minus President Ghani. I tell you very frankly, I'm just...
Well, if Mr. Ghani decides to run in the next elections or whatever government that is formed, maybe he has a right to do that.
So the thing is, why I'm saying that there may not be any elections. I might be a wrong soothsayer. The thing is that the Taliban would not like to talk to President Ghani. And how on earth would election be held when the Taliban, who are important stakeholders, have agreed for a dialogue with the Americans and they have progressed to such an extent? Why should, is peace in Afghanistan more important than the elections? Elections can take place any time.
Absolutely, sir. We also have to see what form government is going to take in the future.
My opinion is there may not be a presidential form of government, you know, because for the Taliban, for Amir and President, I don't think there's any difference. There you give them any name, but this type of they want a new constitution, and in this new constitution, maybe as they are rightly, in one opinion they are right. This constitution was drafted when this country was under occupation. So,
absolutely, sir. There has to be a new set of rules that will be written. Absolutely. Well, let's move on to our second topic, sir, and that's equally important for us. Ma'am, 5 Kashmiris were killed in fighting with government forces in occupied Kashmir on Sunday, and it was further triggering anti-India clashes in which another 10 civilians were also very badly injured. This is a daily occurrence that's taking place in Indian occupied Kashmir. We've been talking about it also on a daily basis, but unfortunately we see that the rest of the world is still not waking up and acknowledging the plight of the Kashmiris. Why do you think that it's still such a big uphill task to just convey to the rest of the world the plight that the Kashmiris are suffering?
I think a much more forceful voice is needed. A much more effort is needed, integrated effort, forceful effort, proactive effort for us. Like they are doing their part. They are giving sacrifices, they are giving their lives, they are living under horrible conditions. They are sustaining the will of being liberated. But for that, they need a voice. The voice should be a forceful voice that they can take their concerns to the outer world globally. And that's what we can offer. We need a planned, proper planning and its implementation, proper lobbying, reaching out to the world, convincing them, telling them what actually is happening in Kashmir. Because like India has created an illusion of like shining India exists nowhere. It is a place where people are blinded with pellet guns, where rape is used as a weapon. But they have created an illusion of a place that maybe in coming like 3 years is going to challenge China economically. That makes India as a very attractive commodity globally. For what we have to do is that we have to reach out to the world in similar way. Tell the real picture tell the real picture to the world. That is important. That is considerably missing. When we're going to do that, properly reach out, connect, lobby for the Kashmiri people continuously, not a once-in-a-while event. Only then we will be able to do something that can lead to the solution of this problem. Because we, on our individual basis, we do it, like Kashmiris are doing their part, but we need to reach out and connect to the world, tell to the world what is happening. They are seeing it, but we have to present ourselves as an attractive commodity as well, something that they will prefer against India. So that for that we need proper planning and integrated effort and proactive effort to get on there and just do it.
Absolutely. I would like to share the tweets of the Foreign Office spokesperson, Mr. Dr. Mohammad Faisal. He said that the snow in Indian-occupied Kashmir bleeds red. Pakistan strongly condemns the continuing Indian state terrorism and martyrdom of 5 innocent Kashmiri boys by Indian occupation forces in the inhuman so-called CASO in Kulgam today. What do you think about that, sir? I mean, do you think that the tweets of our Foreign Office will have an impact among those who are looking at it or listening to us?
I think it's not even a Twitter storm. It's one isolated tweet. I think as our fellow panelists,
we need to make a trend on Twitter.
We need to make a proper policy. There is no Kashmir policy. We do hold conferences. Our foreign minister did go to the UK. He did attend a meeting in their parliament. But there is no integrated plan. So if you don't have an integrated plan, you're going to lose out on it. You must have a proper policy. You must have a proper person contact. It's not just the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It has to be a person in charge of Kashmir affairs.
We have a minister in charge of the Kashmir affairs.
He's in charge for the many other things, but we have to have somebody who is responsible for how our Kashmir campaign is going to be fought. We don't have a policy. What do we want? Do we want an independent Kashmir? Do we want Kashmir with us? Are we sticking to our plebiscite demand, or are we agreeable to the Musharraf formula for 4 points? Nobody knows. How much money do we need to spend on?
Well, that's
Kashmir
because
policy?
the Indians refuse to talk to us at all, sir.
Agreed, but there are so many other things. If the Indians don't talk to you, you have regional approaches, you have international approaches. You got to make a plan for it. India doesn't talk. Okay, let's go through another process. Maybe engage China. China is the new superpower emerging on the block. Talk to Russia. Russia is now also amenable to you. You can raise this issue at SCO, although SCO is not a platform for raising bilateral issues. But there are ways and means. We do not have a proper policy. Whatever we're doing is in isolation. So
I think that's the main takeaway, sir, from what Madam Asma has also said and what you're also saying. It amounts to the same thing. Whereas India continues its senseless Kashmiri massacre and flouting of all norms of justice years after hanging and secret burial of Afzal Guru and Maqbool Butt, Kashmir still bleeds. And India has been doing that, picking up people from Kashmir, and they land up in Tihar jail and then they end up dead, and they don't even have graves to go back to. The grave of Mr. Maqbool Butt in Kashmir is lying empty, although it has a tombstone.
Can I add to this? If you look at right from, I don't think the deaths of these 4 people should be a wake-up call. Right from 47 till today, the principal stand on the plebiscite, asking for the, asking the
UN resolutions to be
have not been
followed,
applied. The Indians have flouted it. Since 1989 till today, things have aggravated in the Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, when you talk about, as Dr. Saab was saying, that what have you done? If you look at the role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I will just quote you one of the adversary, Kanwar Natwar Singh's book, One Life is Not Enough. And he says it goes to the credit of the Pakistan Foreign Service officers to have kept this issue of Kashmir alive in the UN. So this is one part. Now the thing is, what has the chairman of the Kashmir Committee done? Unfortunate. What is past in the past, we know what they did, but now is the time, sir, that on the issue of human rights, you have a president of Azad Kashmir who is a very articulate person, but then you have the elected person. This is the time when a bipartisan, they should appoint a member of the parliament, maybe he's a senator or a member of the National Assembly, a man of standing. There are a number of educated people. Man of standing, man who understands what the issue is. It is a principled stand and it is a humanitarian stand, sir, humanitarian issue. This is the time, sir, when he should go first. He should be talking to the parliaments, to the media, to the human rights offices or organizations in major countries, sir. First is major countries. You have, and major countries where the human rights issue is very alive. You have New Zealand and you have Canada, you have United States, you have Australia, United Kingdom. Then it goes around Russia, China, Iran, other countries, and European Union Parliament. We should be sitting down across the table, talking to them, telling them.
So why haven't we done that in the past 70 years?
I doubt it. I don't know.
Isn't it the job of the foreign officer?
He has asked a question, and I want to say, what has the chairman of Kashmir Committee done about it, sir? Who has stopped him from going abroad and talking to them? The president of Azad Kashmir goes around and talks, but naturally, these people, the parliamentarians abroad, they would like to have a neutral voice, somebody who's a member of parliament, who has the support, bipartisan support, talks to them. And sir, the thing is, and then unless, sir, this voice is heard from people of standing, the agony of these people, the misery of the people under occupied Kashmir will continue. You will hear another 4 people killed. And one last thing, sir. Now this is a time in which, sir, sane voices even within India, within Indian establishment, are questioning the policies of the Indian government, which they are not tenable, they are counterproductive, they are criminal, and this is a criminal, sir.
Well, let's hope that the saner voices in India prevail.
That is the thing,
That's
sir. This is the time now to raise our voice in the manner which I was talking about.
Well, the Indians are also going to be facing their elections very soon. Let's hope that the saner voices in India are the ones that are victorious and not the same old fascist forces. Well, thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and as always, I like to say that please draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. On that note, it's goodbye.